The World in 80 Days, Chapter 4. Having won 20 guineas at whist and taken leave of his friends, Phileas Fogg at 25 minutes past 7 left the Reform Club. Passepartout, who had consciously studied the program of his duties, was more than surprised to see his master guilty of the inexactities of appearing at this unaccustomed hour. For, according to the rule, he was not due in Savile Row until precisely midnight. Mr. Fogg repaired to his bedroom, and called out, "Passepartout!" Passepartout did not reply. It could not be he who was called. It was not the right hour. "Passepartout!" repeated Mr. Fogg, without raising his voice. Passepartout made his acquaintance. "I've called you twice," observed his master, "but it is not midnight," responded the other, showing his watch. "I know it. I don't blame you. We start for Dover and Calais in 10 minutes. A puzzled grin overspread Passepartout's round face. Clearly he had not comprehended his master. "Monsieur is going to leave home?" "Yes," returned Phileas Fogg. "We are going around the world." Passepartout opened wide his eyes, raised his eyebrows, held up his hands, and seemed about to collapse, so overcome was he with stupefied astonishment. "Round the world?" he murmured. "In 80 days," responded Mr. Fogg, "so we haven't a moment to lose." "But the trunks," gasped Passepartout, unconsciously swaying his head right to left. "We'll have no trunks, only a carpet-bag, and 2 shirts and 3 pairs of stockings for me and the same for you. We'll buy our clothes on the way. Bring down my mackintosh and traveling cloak and some stout shoes, though we shall do little walking. Make haste." Passepartout tried to reply, but could not. He went out, mounted to his brougham, fell into his chair, and muttered, "That's good, that is, and I who wanted to remain quiet." He mechanically set about making the preparations for departure. Around the world in 80 days? Was his master a fool? No. Was this a joke, then? They were going to Dover. Good. To Calais? Good again. After all, Passepartout, who had been away from France for 5 years, could not be sorry to set foot on his native soil again. Perhaps they would go so far as Paris, but it would do his eyes good to see Paris once more. But surely a gentleman of so chary of his steps would stop there, no doubt. But then it was none the less true that he was going away. So this domestic person hitherto. By 8 o'clock, Passepartout had packed the modest carpet-bag containing the wardrobes of his master and himself. Then, still troubled in mind, he carefully shut the door of his room and descended to Mr. Fogg. Mr. Fogg was quite ready. Under his arm might have been observed a red-bound copy of Bradshaw's Continental Railway Steam Transit and General Guide, with its timetable showing the arrival and departures of steamers and railways. He took the carpet-bag, opened it, slipped it in a goodly roll of English banknotes, which would pass whenever he might go. "You've forgotten nothing?" asked he. "Nothing, monsieur. My mackintosh and cloak, here they are." "Good. Take this carpet-bag," handing it to Passepartout. "Take good care of it, for there are 20,000 pounds in it." Passepartout nearly dropped the bag, as if the 20,000 pounds were in gold, and weighed him down. Master and man then descended. The street door was double locked, and at the end of Savile Row they took a cab and drove rapidly to Charing Cross. The cab stopped before the railway station at 20 minutes past 8. Passepartout jumped off the box and followed his master, who, after paying the cabman, was about to enter the station, when a poor beggar woman, with a child in her arms, her naked feet smeared with mud, her head covered with a wretched bonnet, from which hung a tattered feather, and her shoulders shrouded in a ragged shawl, approached and mournfully asked for alms. Mr. Fogg took out 20 guineas he had just won at whist, and handed them over to the beggar, saying, "Here, my good woman, I'm glad to have met you," and passed on. Passepartout had a moist sensation about his eyes. His master's action touched his susceptible heart. 2 first-class tickets for Paris having been speedily purchased, Mr. Fogg was crossing the station to the train, where he perceived his 5 friends of the Reform. "Well, gentlemen," said he, "I'm off, you see, and if you will examine my passport when I get back, you will be able to judge whether I have accomplished the journey agreed upon." "Oh, that would be quite unnecessary, Mr. Fogg," said Ralph politely. "We trust your word as a gentleman of honor. You do not forget when you are in London again, in 80 days, on Saturday, the 21st of October, December 1872, at 9:15 p.m. Goodbye, gentlemen." Phileas Fogg and his servant seated themselves on the first-class carriage 20 minutes before 9. 5 minutes later the whistle screamed, and the train slowly glided out of the station. The night was dark, and a fine, steady rain was falling. Phileas Fogg, snugly ensconced in his corner, did not open his lips. Passepartout, not yet recovered from his stupefaction, clung mechanically to the carpet bag, which with its enormous treasure. Just as the train was whirling through Sydenham, Passepartout suddenly uttered a cry of despair. "What's the matter?" asked Mr. Fogg. "Alas, in my hurry, I forgot." "What?" "To turn off the gas in my room." "Very well, young man," returned Mr. Fogg coldly. "It will burn at your expense." This is the end of chapter 4. Now, you notice that Fogg packed a carpet bag. Now, a carpet bag was something that was popular back then, where once a carpet was old and worn down, you could cut it apart and make it into a bag to carry things, because it took a lot of effort to make something like a carpet. And after a while they got worn down to the point where you didn't really want to look at them, there was still a lot of strong, serviceable cloth in there. So people often made bags out of carpet. There are some famous examples of it. Mary Poppins had a carpet bag, which was the bag made out of carpet. And, she was quizzed by the children. "What's this?" "It's a carpet bag." "For carrying carpets in?" "No, made from." So, it was a bag made from carpet. This was also a popular term. This was a term that was often used right after the Civil War to describe people from the North who went down to the South to kind of like take advantage of the situation, because during the Civil War, so much of the South was destroyed. I mean, Sherman burned, and Grant burned, and it was just devastated. So what people would do is they would load up stuff in their bags made out of carpet and go down south and buy stuff up at massively discounted prices, because the economy was ruined and everything was terrible and people were desperate for money. So if you had a little bit of money, you could get a lot of stuff and then take that stuff elsewhere and get even more money. Yankee money. Yeah, because, as Lolly pointed out, Yankee money, because the South printed their own money and they didn't have gold to back it up, and up until like the 1970s. So imagine 2,000 years, 4,000 years, you had money, and then you had money that was backed by gold. And money that wasn't backed by gold wasn't really much money. And one of the things that the Romans did was they took the gold or the silver, and they mixed it with other cheaper things. So there was less and less silver, and there's whole stories about that. But so the Confederate money was just like worthless paper. But the Yankee money was good because it was US dollars and that was backed by gold. And anyway, so that was carpetbaggers, and Phileas Fogg goes off with a carpet bag, which is sturdy and reliable and very economical. Hope you enjoyed. Talk to you later.